Good evening, everyone. My name is Li-Da Kruger, and I'm delighted to be here again on Viking.TV. I was invited last year as one of Anne Diamond's lockdown interview guests last year, as I had just made a documentary with my adoptive mother, Prue Leith, who I think most of you know, or she is best known as one of the Great British Bake Off judges, and it's known as the Great British Baking Show. That is a massive mouthful in the US. And we had just made a documentary about going back to Cambodia, trying to find my roots. Because I had been born during the Civil War in 1974, and my birth parents presumed dead, I was then airlifted to safety and ended up being adopted by Prue and her husband Ravynn, and I had a wonderful life living in England. I arrived in 1976. So we had set out together on this journey to try and find, before it's too late, any biological family or clues to my Cambodian story with the help of DNA. And incredibly, I did actually find relatives, very distant relatives, through DNA in Cambodia and in the US, in Cambodia and the US. But what ended up happening in the documentary, which I was really, really pleased about, was really my mother's journey in understanding my Cambodian side, which meant the world to me and, was more than I could possibly have dreamed of. So this next clip shows a bit of that, and also introduces the Sacred Dancers, because this is about dancing around the world. The Sacred Dancers are a local Cambodian dance troupe who were instrumental, or who still are, instrumental in helping me understand my Cambodian heritage, and also instrumental in helping my mother understand my Cambodian side.
I really feared it would be rather tedious. It would go on for far too long and I would be really uncomfortable. I don't really understand the ceremony except the blessings were pouring upon us. And you know what? It was the most wonderful, moving, beautiful thing. And absolutely extraordinary. Nothing like that's ever happened to me before. And I don't think I'll ever experience anything like it again, ever.
So really, in 20 years of searching for my birth family, I've realized it's less about finding my family, because I probably will never know, and it's more about the opportunity really to discover my birth country, my culture, my heritage. And as I said, and you saw, the Sacred Dancers have been crucial and instrumental in this. So search for my cultural identity brings us neatly to the Sacred Dancers, and I am so grateful to Viking for us to be able to showcase the troupe, because it's an ongoing process, and they are such a special, amazing troupe. Who are they? They are a dance troupe. They are a local Cambodian dance troupe from Cambodia's first ever rural school of traditional dance and music located inside the UNESCO World Heritage Park of Angkor. And before I met the Sacred Dancers, I didn't really connect with my country of birth. I mean, I explored it, I enjoyed it, I went there. But it's hard to explain. It's the effect that the Sacred Dancers have on you when they perform. And when you see them, when I saw them for the first time perform, you're literally transported to Cambodia and the sacred heartlands of Cambodia, which is Angkor, which is where their dance school is actually physically located. And essentially, I suppose it's like witnessing 1,000 years of tradition coming alive in front of you. So before I introduce you to my wonderful next guest, who is the visionary behind the Sacred Dancers troupe, I want to show you a second clip made by the 5-star Amman Resorts in Siem Reap in Siem Reap, and they are a hotel group who have been supporting the Sacred Dancers for a while. So now it is time to introduce you to my wonderful guest, who is Ravynn Karet-Coxen. She is my Cambodian mentor, but also the auntie that I never had. She is also the visionary behind the Sacred Dancers. And over the years, I think it's about 20 years, isn't it, Ravynn, that since we first met, she has helped me, you have helped me really discover my heritage, because growing up in England, I didn't meet any Cambodians really until I met you. And we met, I think, well, definitely after my first documentary about going back to Cambodia to try and find birth family. And I discovered that you had a charitable foundation that operated in Cambodia and some of the remotest rural areas of Cambodia, worst hit, I suppose, after the Khmer Rouge. And I suppose, you gave me that lifeline that I needed to Cambodia, that link to start that journey of my cultural, search for self. Do you think you started that foundation to, is this your way of giving back? I mean, certainly I was looking for a way to give back.
Well, I went back after 22 years of exile and was really in shock because I realized that, you know, all these years I was so upset and angry to have been robbed from my youth and from all this wonderful golden time that we had in Cambodia. But then I also realized that I was a coward not to want to know, not to want to care. And the fact of going back, I realized that some people are kept to, you know, to find their path. And one is always finding the path sooner or later. And the path that I found is to be able to help and to restore, from my memories, the Cambodia, which was the, you know, the Cambodia in its glory time. If you consider that in the time before Pol Pot, Singapore was based itself on designing Singapore on Phnom Penh, and you know, it was a very developed country, not an underdeveloped country. So to see Cambodia in ashes was very painful. But what was more painful was to see the you know, all the people who were there, who suffered so much but never complained. And even between husband and wife, nobody, they didn't know their story because they were so, in French they say pudeur, you know, is kept in within yourself. So they didn't share all those trauma. But the trauma was huge, and their eyes were lifeless, like beads. So that hit me the most. And I decided to start a charity, but I didn't know where to, you know, in which direction to go, because I wanted to alleviate, to soothe the rest of, you know, the rest of the life of elder people. I wanted to care for children. I mean, you have animals, and in the end, I have a mentor called Brian Walker, who was one of the instrumental person for the Grameen Bank, a specialist in rural development, who guided me and felt that the best thing to do is to adopt the whole village. So we went into a mission to identify the most remote villages, and we found near the temple of Bentisway, in the heart of the heritage site, 14 villages, because you see, I wanted to do something where nobody were. I didn't want to be surrounded by a million NGOs where they were horrific in Cambodia. So we went there, and at that time, when we started, the Khmer Rouge was still there. So we had to operate under curfew. And at that time, some British deminer were killed by the Khmer Rouge. So it was a real traumatic time, but a real rewarding time, in a sense that we could reach, you know, the most desperate people.
So can I ask, how did you go from rural development, I suppose, to dance?
Well, in fact, looking back now, I realized that if I have to start a dance school again now from scratch, it wouldn't have been as successful as the one we have created, because we had a bond with all the pans. You know, we look after 14 villages, about 2,868 families. And so since 1999 to 2007, when we started the dance school, we had to go to the process of gaining confidence and trust from the parents. So it was like, you know, going 10 steps forward, 8 steps backward, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, and so on and so forth. And this is why our development work took so long to begin with, but also we want to ensure that it was really well implemented.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once we, from 2099 to 2007, I mean, there was a lot of mileage. So we knew those children, I knew those children since they were born, in a way. So when we started the dance school, there's that bond and that trust between the parents and us, but also with the children. I mean, it was a total discovery because they were educated without discipline in a way and without the knowledge of dance. So it was completely, alien to them. And slowly and steadily, they were introduced to the music, to the dance. I mean, 300 enrolled. And in 6 months, we could identify the one who had the talent to become a dancer or a musician. And in the end, we selected 176, you see.
You used to be a dancer in the Royal Palace yourself, didn't you?
Yes, I was a dancer, but not as a professional dancer, because the classical dance was only taken place at the Royal Palace at the Moonlight Pavilion, and only the royal children and the elite children and the relatives could join in. So it was a matter of discipline. All the children went there as a discipline in a way, and under the strict, direction of Her Majesty the Queen Kosomak, the mother of late King Sihanouk. And so we did that, and it really influenced us in our morally and physically. Is a very strong discipline. Other dancers, which were more the poor relative of the royal family and the elite family, became dancers and professional dancer. And we have few princesses and princes who really carried on and embraced, the career of being a professional dancer, like Princess Bukhadevi, the eldest daughter of King Sihanouk, became the prima ballerina of Cambodia, and she happened to be our
patron.
And
yes.
Guided us a lot. I mean, to be great, when I started the dance school in 2007, she was then the Minister of Culture, and she was not so keen on the idea because it never happened. And she said, no, you cannot have a classical dance school with royal repertoire for children in the villages who have no discipline. It's not going to work. So I managed to convince her, and learn on the behold. I mean, it was this incredible magic, a miracle, to see those little ugly duckling becoming like elegant swan, and then, to see them is very moving because they are really, excellent.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Sacred Dancers. Who are they? And what was your idea behind the dance troupe? I mean, they're called the Sacred Dancers of Angkor, but they are a dance troupe, aren't they, from your conservatoire?
Initially, they were, the idea was to have a dance school, a serious conservatoire with dance lessons and music lessons. But then I was very, very surprised, and His Majesty the King saw them and was very moved and very impressed by the control of the movement, of the rhythm that the dancers had. And he believed, as I did, that they were somehow guided by above. I mean, and to me, I had to sit and think and feel, okay, so now what is the next step? They can't be just a dance troupe. I mean, you know, just performing and dancer. There's many dancers. So we need to give them a specific identity. And I was thinking, and I used to take the children out to visit the temples. You know, when you're French and you live in Paris, you never see you never been to the Eiffel Tower. Well, it's the same factor in Cambodia. I mean, those children never seen the temple, never been to the temple. So I took them and explained to them, you know, about the history, about, you know, and especially shown them the bas-relief which depict the whole legions and history. And I was sitting there at the Bayon temple. This is why our logo, the face of our is the face of the Bayon on our logo. So I took the children there, and I was sitting, waiting, you know, waiting for them. And suddenly I have a flashback when I went in the hard communist day in Russia with my husband. That was before I was allowed to come back to Cambodia. And I was, you know, there in Ukraine. My husband was in business, and they took me around and took me to a beautiful basilica. And when I went there, I was, you know, like so sad because that beautiful church had no soul, was hollow, because there was no worshipper. Was there, beautiful, standing alone. Few years later, I went back to Ukraine, and that was when, you know, Russia was and Ukraine was, you know, more open, and, you know, services were happening. And I went back to that same basilica, and at 6:01, it was still empty. At 6:00, it was like little ants, you know, filling the church. And, you know, in Russia, you do not have seats. I mean, everybody is standing up. And everybody was standing up, you know, like sardine, you know, old people, young people, children, and they were not connecting with each other at all. They were completely and utterly connected with their Bob. And you could feel that spiritual energy, you know, linking from earth to heaven. And I had that flashback when I was sitting in Bayon, and I knew exactly what I was going to do, because the temple sounded hollow. The temple were a magnificent archaeological site, listed at UNESCO archaeological site, dead stone, dead temple. So then I felt, that's it, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what the Greek did with the Vestal. So you had the dancers, you know, praying. Only by prayers, only by rite of propitiation that you can invite, you can celebrate the spirit of the temple, the gods, to come and make the temple alive. And so far we did such rites in 42 temples as far as Laos in Wat Khu, you know. You've been there, Li-Da. You've been there, and you've seen when we did the rite on the Bakam.
Well, in fact, we have that video that we can play in the background to you just explaining about the spiritual side, actually.
So it's not only in the Bakam that in the temples that we did, in the major temples, we also did a ritual in the jungle. So we were walking for hours and hours up the mountain. I mean, you know, and we did ritual in the water. We did ritual, you know, in the most sacred site in Cambodia. So the Sacred Dancer is the only troupe in the world, not only in Cambodia, but in the world, to meditate and pray for the peace in the world, and for all the children in the world, so that they do it daily without fail. So this is why at the beginning of the pandemic, I had a dilemma. We could have relaxed and told the troupe who were sustainable, you know, through the income of the Divine Salah and of the visits. So no more visit, no more performances, no more money coming in. And the reason I took upon myself and my husband, and with the help of many friends, including you, Li-Da, is to continue to pay the salary, even though we cut since April 2019 the salary by 30%, because the dilemma is either we stop them and they come back when tourism resumes, but that they would come back as mere dancer, no more, no less. They would have lost that spiritual thread. But in order not to break that spiritual thread, in order for them to continue the spiritual thread that they have cherished for 14 years, we have to give them a salary to survive.
I think you mentioned a very important point that, you know, we've jumped ahead a little bit, but we can carry on a bit later. But you mentioned the Divine Sala. Now, the Divine Sala is a theatre where people can go and watch the sacred dancers perform twice weekly. But the point is that you've got the spiritual guardians. You set up the spiritual guardians on the one side, and an identity that's fitting to where they were born.
Sacred dancers, in fact, are two entities. The first basic entity is they are trained, professionally trained and highly trained now as professional dancer with all the repertoire of the Royal Ballet. Okay, so they perform full dress performance.
So the sacred dance is it's a ritual. It's like a prayer, essentially, isn't it? It's an sacred ancient art form. So when normal people think they're dancing, they are performing a prayer. But can you explain to us what we're actually seeing? The hand movements, the gestures. You know, they've been handed down over centuries, haven't they? Over a millennia. What are we seeing when they perform?
The gesture was revived by the Queen Mother. She revived the Ballet Royal. She created the Ballet Royal since, the expression of dance is a gesture that was taken from the temples. But if you say that it was, directly inherited from the Angkorian time, I don't know. I mean, out of the blue, I created the sacred dances, because in a temple you have inscription where you have like thousands of dancers to serve the temple. So they didn't perform. They only serve the temple. They dedicated tribute, the dedicated ritual, to the god. And in those days, if you look at the inscription on the temple, only the kings and the high, dignitary were allowed to join.
So this is why it's so very. I feel, every time I see them perform, I feel very privileged, because it doesn't translate really through the screen. You can feel the magic. I suppose that's the word, when they're doing it in front of you.
We do not have an audience. We do not have an audience. It's only between them and the God and the spirit of the temple. We don't do it for for show. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do tape the video as a record for us, and then
Sure.
we post it to share it so people can see it. But after,
So the beautiful headdresses and the trademark white and natural fibers, can you just explain for the audience, viewers, what the symbolism, you've thought about it really carefully, what is the symbolism behind their accessories, because it does set them apart from other troops, for sure.
well, normally the headdress and all the adornments are made a boat and made in a plated gold. I have innovated the idea of them weaving their own crowns in palm leaves. So every time, and their crowns are, once the crown is completed, it is, offered to the gods. So when they dance with the crown on their head, it is like a silent prayer to save the palm tree in Cambodia, because the palm tree is the rural symbol of Cambodia, and nowadays is endangered because people are cutting the palm tree. We take like 20 years to grow in order to make safe like for tourists, and this is a silent prayer. Now, I put them in a white muslin. In fact, when they do their ritual, this is another innovation, because, white in Cambodia is mourning. But for me, the white of their costume is the purity. So I had to ask Princess to be allowed to do so. Okay? I used the muslin of mosquito net as a costume, because again, every time they wear it is a silent prayer to eradicate malaria, who was really rife in Cambodia.
But it just looks so beautiful, and they make their crowns themselves, don't they? And their everything themselves. Was that easy to teach? It looks quite difficult.
It is it's not easy, but
And how long will a crown last? Because they perform quite regularly.
Well, the crown lasts. We have to make sure that once they dance, they take the crown. The crown is kept very carefully.
And also the natural fibers is fitting again for their backgrounds and where they grew up, as opposed to the Royal Ballet, or obviously the Royal Ballet is something completely different, but the costumes are very much brighter, more gold, more
Well, the costume of the Royal Ballet is very, very stunning. It's incredibly stunning. It's really beautiful. But you have to remember that I don't have $30,000 for a costume, because every silk, every piece of fabric is ornated, is embroidered, is a lot of skill, a lot of work, is incredibly beautiful. But in the other hand, what His Majesty the King was worried about is that by simplifying the costume, I allow the eyes not to be distracted, but to concentrate on the perfection of the movement, you see, which is in a way good for us, because,
absolutely.
They keep themselves.
Now, you mentioned earlier revival. The Sacred Dancers are part of a wider revival of traditional dance. Can you just explain again briefly for the viewers, if they don't know, about the devastation that the Khmer Rouge left behind in the genocide, and there not being enough, very few professional artists, along with all the other people that died who survived?
Well, the revival of the classical dance is all the credit go to Princess Bophadevi, because she is the one who gathered all the ancient master and mistresses to revive, all the repertoire, all the dances, and all that. I mean, that is her own doing. Thanks to her, and for Princess to have been a patron to us. I mean, she passed it down, to the sacred dancers, like, all the repertoire. I mean, she is passing down the repertoire. She's overlooking it. I mean, and everything have to be really, really, really perfect. And, I mean, she will not tolerate, like a minute mistake.
Mm.
The pose and it have to be really.
But it's really shocking that I think it was 1 in 10 dancers survived.
Yes, dancers survive. I think that is not 1 in 10; it's 1 in 50 dancers survive. Quite frankly.
Yeah.
But let's not talk about dancers. I mean, so many people were killed in different fields.
But it's
complicated.
But that sort of leads me on to the importance of this was an art form that had been passed down, so there have had to been revivals because it has been threatened throughout history.
But now the danger is that because the people who are taking over, I mean, and who did not have that education, tend to bastardize it, tend to change it. So it could be beautiful, but it's not the authentic legacy. And what we are doing, and thanks to Princess, I am keeping the authentic legacy of, of the art form of dance, which was listed as UNESCO. And to us, is very important because the sacred dancers are born and trained in the sacred land of Angkor. Angkor is listed as a tangible treasure in UNESCO, and the classical dance is also listed as UNESCO treasure. So we're linking to the sacred dancer in the cradle of the Khmer cultural heritage, both treasure, the Angkor and the dance. And that is.
So the next clip that we're going to go and see is showing where the dancers train at the Conservatoire, because it's a sacred location, isn't it? I mean, there's something quite significant about where you chose to have the.
It was accidental, we bought that land, and in fact, it was a training center, but only after, when we started the dance school, we realized how important this art form was to the population, to the villagers, because suddenly they change, they reconcile themselves with their value, their cultural value, their traditional value, which was very important to us. But then we realized that the Conservatoire was at the foot of Phnom Dae, and Phnom Dae had one of the most ancient temples, and that at the horizon, in the right, you have the Phnom Kulen, the Kulen mountain, and then on the left you have Kabal Spian, the river of the Thousand Lingam, and behind us the temple of Bentisway. So we are slapped in the middle of a very highly charged, spiritually charged quadrant. And
amazing.
People have felt that. And, when Harrison Ford came on the special, exclusive visit, I was a bit, saying, oh my God, I mean, Hollywood here, I mean, but then I was most impressed and very grateful. And he was very, very spiritual.
Moved. Yeah.
He was very spiritual. He was very serious. He was, I mean, he imbued himself with and felt the spirituality. As soon as he came in, he said, "Oh my God!" I mean, it's you know, he felt it, and he joined in. He joined in the meditation. He joined in, and he was completely mesmerized. And he told us that it was with the visit of Angkor, it was his most poignant memory that he will keep forever from Cambodia. And he's not
very special.
see.
So shall we see the next video to see where the dancers train, and then we can talk about more about their daily training and meditations and things like that. Wonderful. So can you explain a little bit more about their daily routine and how they maintain their knowledge and their learning?
Well, their daily routine, when they first come to the dance school, they always have to, you know, keep the place, the hole and the ground clean. So they're divided in group and they just, you know, clean the place. Then they go up to the dance hall and join in for the prayers and for the meditation. Now, every day they have a different mantra that they have to recite 108 times with the mala beads. And
with the what, sorry?
Mala beads, the 100
mala beads.
Mala beads. So
what are they? Can you explain what they are? Sorry, I'm being
mala beads
ignorant.
The praying beads.
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah.
You have 108 beads. Why 108? Because in spirituality, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, number 9 is very important. So 108 is 1 and 8 is 9. Okay. So they meditate, and after the meditation, they dedicate a piece of music and a piece of dance to the spirit of dance and the spirit of music. And then they go on for over an hour to the exercise of suppleness, because the most important thing for a Cambodian dancer is to be really, really supple, because the movement is very sinuous. It's like the movement of a serpent, of a dragon, you see. And in Cambodia, the dragon is very, very important. And as you can see in every temple, in every building, and everywhere, you have the dragon, you have the serpent.
And often they are on one leg. I mean, they have to be seriously strong too.
Oh yes, but yes, So they're on one leg, they have to turn, they have, I mean, you know, so the suppleness is a key to excel in the classical dance. But they are not only trained in classical dance, all of them are trained in folk dance, in drama dance, and in music.
So through these dances, what they're learning, they are understanding, because the dances are old legends, aren't they? And stories, you know, ancient legends.
All the repertoire of the world ballet are based on the Mahabharata and on the Ramayana.
So that is why. So they are learning about their history and their culture through the dance. And that, I think, you know, if I hadn't made it clear before, that I think that is what is happening in a very sort of subconscious way, in a very spiritual way. And
this is why it's very important. And this is why visitors, they are sought after by visitors, because the tourists who go and visit Angkor during the daytime, they just understand and they look through the bas-relief. So they read the legend of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana on the bas-relief, and in the evening we make those legends come to life. So for them is is an enchantment. You know, in other places where you have, like I call it tourist trap, they just dance. I mean, it's no story.
But that you definitely get a sense that the students in the dance school and in the dance troupe, the Sacred Dancers, they have a real sense of who they are, and that's down to you, isn't it? You give them a sense of where they're born.
And princess and the king and the queen who acknowledge them and support them. So that is a very important factor, to them. I mean, like every year they celebrate the king, the queen birthdays, the king celebration for his enthronement, the memorial for the king Sihanouk, and so on. So there's a very strong link. And for them, they are very proud and passionate, and they are devoted to, to protect, to preserve, and to perpetuate what they have learned and what was passed down from Princess as well.
So, as you know, I'm making a documentary which I started calling The Angkor Effect, because it's really about the power of dance to heal, to give an identity, to reconnect to lost heritage. And I've experienced it myself, and I'll go on to talk about that in a second with my documentary. But tell us the story of how you accidentally discovered through dance how dance through the dancers was somehow allowing the parents who had forgotten their traditions and their family values, and how suddenly it transformed the villages that your foundation was working with.
Well, I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with me. I think it has something to do with the spirit, with their spirit that they buried profoundly in themselves, because any knowledge was a capital crime. So they had to eradicate everything. They could not remember, their past, what they lived, their past life. They can't even remember how to brush their teeth and wash their hands. So they were, when we came and we, adopt them, I mean, they were in animal state practically. So the fact of hearing the pinpeat music, the traditional music, the fact of being mesmerized, by the sinuous movement of the dancers, slowly brought all this, feeling, all this, emotion deeply buried in them. And that they became slowly themselves. And this is how they're here with their value, they're here with their cultural value, with their family value, with the traditional value. So it's them, you know. What we did is that I was very lucky that my husband sponsored 30 dancers to go to America in the time of Phum Ben. Now, Phum Ben is like the celebration of how you call it in this country?
Remembrance for ancestors or ancestors.
Yeah.
Ancestors.
And I took them there and we slept in pagodas. I didn't take them as performer. I took them as sacred dancers to, you know, to bridge and bond Cambodian American back to the motherland where the ancestor of this Cambodian American were through the daily ritual, through the daily prayer, to the daily meditation. And that was a very big healing factor for those Cambodian American, you know, to have them there for 6 weeks, you know, going from pagoda to pagoda, from, you know, Boston to New York to, you know, to Washington and Los Angeles.
But what was extraordinary for me on that trip is I hadn't really taken interest in traditional dance at all, because it's quite slow and I'd never really watched it. Anyway, so I came along on the trip, didn't I, to document the trip, and I was absolutely, I didn't realize it at the time, but I found, you know, literally twice a day or more, I'd be watching them perform these sacred dance rituals. Every night the pagodas were completely packed. There was a huge outpour of emotion, and I was watching this through a lens because I was filming it and I didn't realize it was happening to me too, but I was also being connected to the motherland, or, you know, and it was only
the same factor that unburied the emotion of the parents and bond them back with their value happened to you. Even if even if you were a baby and you never knew anything, is in the gene. The resonance of the music, the resonance, all that. This resonance is buried in your gene. So obviously it came out slowly and slowly, and then it just, you know, you just search for it and you know, identify it and then finally connect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's in the making, this documentary, but it's such an extraordinary it's such an extraordinary journey, but for me to now realize that I'm part of that journey. So it's a long edit, but it's a labor of love.
But I just feel that this documentary is taking a long time, not for a reason. Everything for a reason.
Yes, I'm sure.
That is that we're not quite ready to understand the whole meaning of everything.
No, I agree that
the more you come, the more you just, you know.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's only now that I'm beginning to really understand. But let's play the next clip. Basically, this is it's a taster of the tour that we were just talking about in 2013. But it's also, the importance. I'm sort of exploring the power of the healing power of dance, but also I'm exploring, I'm also trying to push the point of, why it's important to preserve traditions.
I grew up in this country without knowing the knowledge. I almost forgot what it like to be Cambodian. But seeing them, it brings back memory.
Here in the US, we don't get to see our culture like a real Cambodian. It's always a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just do it for symbol. But with this group, we see a real big picture of Cambodian.
It's a huge role that the Sacred Dancers are playing because this is an art form that was robbed from me. That was robbed from my parents and robbed from my people. The war literally took Cambodia back to the Stone Age.
Without embracing the cultural heritage, the identity would be lost forever. Since we started the dance school, we discovered that it was almost as a medium to heal their psychological scars and to reconcile them with their family values, their cultural values, their traditional values. Somebody needs to protect the cultural heritage. The sacred dancers, who better than them?
Because I like Salapa, but not Dal Kun Kmaining or Kun Kmai Yung, the Thailand Long.
នៅក្នុងរយៈពេល10ឆ្នាំហ្នឹងហើយនេះខ្ញុំបានចូលប្រាសាទអង្គរវត្តហ្នឹងមានរូបអប្សរាហើយនេះខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យពិភពលោកដឹងថាខ្មែរហ្នឹង After realizing how powerful the sacred dance were to their own parents, they decided to take the troupe to America to go and bond and bridge Cambodian American with motherland.
I was almost in tears. It's very
and I think my mom
inspirational,
teared up
like you
too
said.
watching it.
Yes, like we don't get to see
We
that.
never get to see it.
ខ្ញុំខ្លួនខ្ញុំផ្ទាល់ខ្ញុំមានមោទនភាពចំពោះខ្លួនឯងដែលបានហាត់សិល្បៈ
So coming back to the present, that was 8 years ago. Today, the sacred dancers are no longer children. They are beautiful young adults. And the sacred dancers are one of the most authentic cultural experiences on offer in the main tourist town of Siem Reap. So in the 15 years that since, you know, the sacred dancers have existed, Ming, Auntie, what are some of the highlights for you with them?
To me, the highlight is the real astonishment, amazement, you know, and to find it that is a true miracle, a treasure coming out of of the land of Angkor. To see them, if you see them live today in huts and in very humble condition, and once you see them on stage, all this vanish away, and they are outstanding performer. You know, when I remember, I mean, the thing which, you know, moved me the most is that when Princess Devi, before dying, that was her last international trip, in fact, tour, she accompanied us to Japan, and we dance, we perform in the Sumida Hall for the second son of the Emperor of Japan, which now is the brother of the current, Emperor. And he came with his wife. And at the end, when you have 1,500 in the audience stand for a standing ovation, including, you know, the Imperial Highnesses, is and you could see tears rolling down, you know, the sacred dancer, but they kept their composure and their dignity, and they were so proud. And that, to me, is a big achievement, coming from dusty villages to that achievement. It is worth all the effort that I made and all the sacrifice that I made for them. And this is why I'm continuing, because I know that, you know, they protect the authenticity of what Princess have left.
So to everyone watching, you have to go and see them when we can all travel again. Also, do check out the comments on TripAdvisor, because if you don't believe us, it's all there. But it hasn't been easy, Auntie, has it? You've dedicated your life to this. But what a result. And so this next clip is by the former UNESCO representative in Cambodia. And this is how she feels about the dancers.
As UNESCO, we work a lot with the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, and we work, in fact, for the quality of the dancing troupes. We have been encouraging them, in fact, to promote quality of the dancing. And that's why, because of that, we have been promoting a lot the Sacred Dancers, being the only troupes, in fact, from the World Heritage Area, but also the only troupe having this quality. Tourism is booming in Cambodia, which is very positive. It gives a lot of opportunity, but there is a double phase to the successful story. It means that we have increasing mass tourism. Tour operators are going to the cheapest solution, to the quickest solution. Everything is packaged in a way that it's not very respectful of the Cambodian culture. The main thing to do is to trace what are the quality troupes, and the Sacred Dancers is the best in town. Also to enjoy a true and genuine experience of Cambodian culture, not something being fake, being touristic, being of bad quality, and giving a false image, of the Cambodian culture. There is also another challenge from the economic point of view, is that young couples, they have their own aspiration. So this has an impact, for example, in Banteasrai villages. Because first of all, the parents, they want their children to bring more money, or they want to migrate and to take their children with them, or they are asking their children to earn the income. Many teenagers were leaving the troupe because they were forced by their parents, and now it's coming to a point where it's quite dramatic. We need now to support the conservatoire and to give them the means, in fact, to survive. I mean, it's a daily struggle, because they could have been offered to work in a factory far from here, where they won't be better paid, by the way, but they don't know it.
So for me, I suppose the constant challenges that you and the Sacred Dancers face for them to stay together as a troupe is, for me, the story of, it's a microcosm, and it sort of personifies the whole story of Cambodia's recovery. And then COVID hits, the pandemic hits. So, when, as I was saying earlier, when we can all travel again, where can visitors go and see them? How can we support them? How can we experience this magical, transformative experience that we're talking about?
Well, once tourism resumes, obviously everything will go back to normal. So they will perform at the Divine Sala, maybe more than twice weekly. We still will receive, exclusive visit for, spiritual experiences. We can also start a, sort of meditation classes, perhaps. Aman Saha, I hope, will continue to support us and commission us to have them perform there as other big hotels. And that's it. But this is down the line. All I can say is today, even in the pandemic, people can still see them. People who are in Cambodia and able to go to the dance school can still see them, because they have not stopped at all. I left Cambodia on the 19th of February 2019, and since then I am daily with them on FaceTime and Messenger to monitor them, to monitor some ritual, to monitor their classes. You see, visitors who like to have them at Divine Sala, I mean, they can, they can commission them to come to Divine Sala now to perform.
Just to say that what we're seeing in the video is a performance at the Divine Sala, which is in Siem Reap. It's a little theatre that you fundraise to build. I mean, how has that changed their professional lives? Would you say, the Divine Sala?
I beg your pardon?
How would you say that the Divine Sala has changed their professional lives? I mean, in terms of earning a salary from being able to perform here.
No, I don't get it.
No, I'm just saying, how much has having a theatre in Siem Reap helped the Sacred Dancers?
Well, I mean, you have money in, and that is, is enable us to pay them and to make their livelihood sustainable through the money of the Divine Sala performance, but also through the visits, which are quite substantial, because the exclusive visits are not cheap. And we are working with top end agency in New York and in Chicago and in Germany and so on and so forth. So I mean, you have clients who come with a private plane and they just want to be alone. They just want a very exclusive, very perfect, very unique thing that in fact is catered to for them.
But what is heartbreaking is, you mentioned sustainability. This was always supposed to be a sustainable social enterprise, and they had almost reached that point. In fact, they had, and then COVID hit.
Yes,
because in that video,
don't forget, everyone is in the same boat. Everyone.
No, absolutely.
One now has no salary. I managed to maintain the salary for one and one reason only. I get my husband to sponsor them, and we need $4,000 a month. And in the last year and a half, we have put a lot of money from our own pocket, you see. And the reason we did that is simply because we didn't want to break the spirit thread. If the spiritual thread is broken, they will not they cannot come back as spiritual dancer. Okay, so we lose them forever. So this is why I'm fighting, and this is why the Voice of America and the Phnom Penh Post, maybe you can share that true link of post of appeal, had done this appeal, because my appeal is to find 4,000 people who would give us $1 a month just for a year, just until tourism resumes. We don't want money for nothing. We want just enough to give them their salary, having cut 30% of their salary. And
I know there's no social security in Cambodia, is there?
No, there's nothing. And like now, there's a lockdown. So the teachers are not able to come. But all of them are at the Conservatoire, and they're linking with me every day. So I know what they're doing. I see what they're doing. Where they're doing. So during the whole lockdown, only 1 week that they couldn't go to the dance school
at all.
And in that week, all of them sent me the little video of them praying at home.
Oh, really?
The leg is not snapped. It's not broken.
But in fact, I think we have some pictures of them literally yesterday.
Yes.
Praying and working and meditating.
Yes.
I
send it to you, but I have, I have it on my.
I don't think you can hold it up. You could try.
Look. You see?
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
You see?
Mm. So. I mean, Viking have very kindly allowed us to do a call to action, and I think there's a card or something that's going to flash on screen, but also it'll go. So if you go to this link, there's PayPal options, which are US dollars and in UK pound sterling. So that would be amazing if you were interested.
You should mention that we're a registered charity in the US and in the UK, so tax deductible as well.
Yes, very important. Very important. Now, I mean, finally, really, Auntie, you know, you are so amazing in adapting and creating and innovating. And so what, I mean, for you, you know, what are the Sacred Dancers going to be, do you think, post-pandemic for you?
Well, right now I have sleepless night and I have to find a way to pay them, basically, because their side of the story is to perfection it, to learn more repertoire, to excel in what they are doing. Is all I'm asking. And when we have a crisis or event like we had recently for Prince Philip, we do a ritual, you know, that is, they have to be on call, and they are doing it absolutely perfectly with me monitoring from here. But my side of the story is to secure the income. How to do it with no tourists, and how to do that with a husband who is retired and who is about to divorce me. Okay.
So just going back there, you mentioned the Prince Philip tribute.
Let's finish this thing. So what I'm trying to do is to dream of saying where maybe to put on offer some rituals that people can buy for their parents who passed away, for a birthday, for a celebration of a wedding, for a commemoration, is a present. So all they have to do is to give us the photograph, the story, the briefing, and we will do a fantastic out of this world ritual for them from the heart of Angkor, and we video it on a private link and send it to them, and they will, and that money will help toward the sari. But obviously it can't be cheap, because it takes 4 days to do this, and then you know, and a lot of effort, and very unique. It's very, very unique.
I know. I've witnessed. You did a wedding blessing for a couple, and that was incredible. And it's sort of
even now they're still sharing that video, and they're talking about it.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So the late Prince Philip, you know, going back to the association of dance and being a royal tradition as well. The Sacred Dancers did something for
amazing,
our Queen, in fact.
It's amazing. They did an amazing tribute for to commemorate the 100 days of Prince Philip passing on the 18th of July 2021. And that, you know, I felt that as a British charity first, secondly as a support to Two Kingdom, and to celebrate, you know, the life of Prince Philip in this beautiful remembrance, but also as a support to Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth, who's 95 years old and who has been going through life, through ordeals with such dignity, and, you know, it's beautiful.
So I think we've come to the end. Thank you, Ming. But I think we're going to do questions, aren't we, after this? But thank you, everyone, for watching. And just to leave you with a final little word from Anne Lemaitre, who was the Cambodian UNESCO representative?
It would be a real tragedy, in fact, to lose his troupe, because now the musicians and the dancers became real artists. So this would be a loss for Cambodia. You know, we don't have so much artists of this level, in fact, in Cambodia. I would encourage everyone, my friends, my partners, my relatives, my professional contacts, in fact, to support this troupe as much as possible.
Hello, hello, hello. The reason we have different backgrounds right now is that I'm actually on holiday and I wasn't going to trust the internet connection I had in the Lake District, but I do have one. And Auntie, you are in where are you? Wiltshire?
In the piano room because the dining room was too dark.
Anyway, let's look at some questions. Thank you for watching. Right, here's a question from Montclair Mike. I hope I've pronounced your name right. How old or how young do you have to be to start dancing? And do they still live at home during their rigorous schedule?
Well, they start at as young as 4 years old. And because the youngest you start, the more supple you can become. And no, they do not live in the conservatoire. They go back. I mean, they have a training of 4 hours a day, and then they go back home for the young one and the newcomer.
They're in nearby villages, aren't they? They come on bicycle or walk or moped.
About at the most is about 30 minutes by bicycle.
Okay, so Jerry, I'm not sure where Jerry is. He's asking, are face masks a part of the cultural dancing? I know there are masks in Cambodian traditional culture, but are they used in the sacred dances? As a collector of cultural masks, I would like a suggested resource on the masks or facial features used in the rituals.
On the sacred ritual, no. They do not wear masks because they are, is a profound ritual that connect them from earth to heaven. It's not a performance, but they do wear those masks on their full dress performance. And the full dress performance, but you have to bear in mind that in Cambodia, the masks are only worn by monkeys, the role of monkeys and giant.
So if Jerry if he wanted to buy any, where would he go?
Well, he can contact us and we can have them made for him.
Brilliant. By Facebook probably is the easiest way. We have
NKFC at nkfc.org.
Okay, well, we'll flash that card up at the end. Berenice from Morristown. The pandemic has affected performing arts around the world. How have these dancers fared during the past year and a half? And in general, how has Cambodia done during the pandemic? Thank you for a very interesting look into a faraway world.
Well, Cambodia had suffered a lot, and especially the town of Siem Reap, which based on tourism. Now, for the sacred dancers, we had 2 options to stop them, but to stop them would have been a tragedy, because once you stop them, you break the spiritual thread, and this is why we're fighting to keep them on. And they since the pandemic, they're being in the conservatoire every day. They only miss 1 week, and in that week they did the meditation and prayer at home.
So they're still training every day, aren't they? And
they're training every day, and they're linking with me in England in the Cotswold, which I'm monitoring them, and every day they're training. They're rehearsing, and they're making the adornments and crowns and so on and so forth.
Janet in San Diego asks, well, first of all, she says, what a fascinating story of the host's adoption. Tonight's guest mentioned she was in exile from Cambodia. Is that something you can tell us about? Where was she exiled to and why?
Well, why was I exiled is because, I mean, my family were close to the royal family, and then if we didn't leave, then I think that I would have been killed. So we left, and we left first of all to France, and then to Switzerland, and then I met my husband, and who's British. I got married, and then here I am in England.
Okay, so and also just to quickly go, but you know, you were, not to repeat what was in the program, but you know, going back was important for you to give back, really, I suppose, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes, because I feel that, you know, every day, every single person have a path to find, and sooner or later, once find that path, and I found that path in going back and giving back.
And you were my path. And NKFC, your foundation.
Yes.
And it's ongoing, and it is completely ongoing. Okay, so Denise in Florida, thank you for all you have done to help those less fortunate by creating these opportunities for the sacred dancers. What can visitors traveling to Cambodia do to ensure that they are giving back to local communities?
Well, first of all, is to go by your own flair and not to trust guides and tour operators so much, and just to research and get in touch.
Alan in America asks, it seems like the Cambodian dancers have similar moves and body language as Thai dance. Could you speak about that, please? Thank you.
Well, I think that I will put it in the reverse. There's a Thai dance have the similar gesture than the Cambodian dance, since they are based on the Cambodian classical dances. You have to remember that at the time of Ayutthaya, the king of Thailand, the king of Siam, then took prisoner the king of Cambodia with all his troupe of dance and musician and many other scholars and you know, erudite. And you know, when the king of Cambodia went back, they kept most of the dancers, and the dancers were there to train the Thai dancers. But if you look, I mean, it's all in if you Google it, it's on in the internet anyway.
Auntie, I have to call you Auntie because it's very respectful, the Cambodian language and the culture.
Well, I adopted the niece, so I mean, this is
what time are we talking? When did this happen?
In Ayutthaya. I mean, I have to look back with that. I mean, it's
but it was
it's an Indian Korean time.
Okay. So Middle Ages.
No.
Earlier.
After.
After.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stuart from Brockton, Massachusetts. Do the dancers regularly perform for local people as well as for tourists?
No, the dancers are trained in a conservatoire, and the conservatoire is shut to everybody because it's a serious conservatoire where they need to concentrate, and it demands a lot of concentration and effort to achieve and to learn the 1,500 gestural of dance. In order to earn, they are going to the Divine Sala, a little theater in Siem Reap. But yes, we do have a quota of seats for local people who will pay a fraction of the price of the visitors. But our main our main aim for the Divine Sala is to share, you know, this art form of dance to visitors. Now, having said that, once a year we do perform for the Cambodian New Year, for the population, for the villagers in the pagoda, and also 2 or 3 times a year we do dance drama, and dance drama can only be performed for Cambodians because it's very long. It lasts like 4 hours, and is a long story. So yes, we do that for them.
But what I've noticed from you know, knowing the sacred dance for such a long time is that when you know, traditionally you know, locals generally, you know, it was behind doors, this kind of dance. So whenever it is performed, it's such a unique experience for anyone that sees this, because it's not usually seen by anyone, you know. So it's either paid for, but like in the Divine Sala, or it's a spiritual ritual that is done, you know, without audiences. It's for the Khmer Cambodian gods. So, you know, when we perform at the temples, the security people and everyone, they are totally blown over when they see the dancers perform these rituals, because it's something else. You can't really explain it.
Yes, you're right. All the rituals are, we do not have an audience. We do not invite people. It's just between the dancer and the spiritual force and their gods. You have to remember that what we're doing is not religious, it's spiritual. So it can embrace any denomination of faith. But people are you know, are able to commission the sacred dancer to do a ritual, and that ritual will be for them. So they will be able to be present or not present. If they're not present, we would film it on a link, on a private link, and send it to them.
Sydney in Malibu, how long do members continue to perform with the sacred dancers, and what do the girls generally do once they retire from dancing?
Well, so far we started in 2007, so they're not retired yet. So I don't know. They will be teaching. They will be teaching the
next generation. Sorry, Auntie, I interrupted you.
No, that's it.
Oh. I didn't know whether it was my internet connection just then. Okay, so Adrienne from Arvada says, what a beautiful, serene form of dance. What does the training involve? And it seems that flexibility and strength are very important.
I'm very touched that you noticed that. The Cambodian dance require a lot of training, especially on the suppleness of all the limbs. And as you can see, a dancer have to mesmerize the gods, have to mesmerize the audience in a very sinuous movement, which is similar to the sinuous movement of the dragon. Now you have to remember, and you can Google it, Cambodia was born on water, and the dragon is very important for Cambodia.
Daphne from Holt, what is the selection entry process for girls to train to become a sacred dancer?
Well, when we started the dance school in 2007, 300 enrolled, and after 6 months, 176 was retained. So it is the endurance, the dedication. You know, it's in fact, I mean, it's no different from any dance in the world.
So, Lara from Boston. Thank you for this look into the Cambodian culture. Fascinating. Are the dancers only women?
Yes, the dancers are only women. the only male dancers are the one who has the monkey role and the giant roles.
Actually, Auntie, this might be an opportunity to talk about the musicians who we haven't really talked about.
Without the musician, the dancers cannot exist because the musicians are giving the beat.
And they're boys.
Yes. And the dancers have to follow the beat of the music. And without them, they cannot dance. So it's a fusion, it's in unison.
But also the dancers at the Conservatoire learn how to play those instruments as well, don't they?
Oh, yes. All the dancers, all the female dancers have to learn the folk dance, the classical dance, the drama dance, and the music. Now, the male musician had to learn the folk dance and the drama dance, as well as the musician, as well as the role of the monkeys and giants in the classical dance.
And also, you know, it's also, I think, worth mentioning as well, in my point, you know, the instruments that you would have seen in some of those videos can also be found on the bas-reliefs in Angkor. I mean, these are ancient instruments, which is extraordinary, isn't it?
That's right.
And very few people, because of the genocide, there are very few professional dancers and musicians left that can play these instruments.
Well, thanks to Princess Bapadavi, she revived the dance, the classical dance, and she revived the classical music. So no, you have a lot of dancers who learn the art of dance on a weekly basis.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's still a very, you know, it's a very skilled art form, both the instruments and the musicians and the dance. I mean, it's still, you know.
Absolutely, yes.
And Tad in San Francisco, did these sacred dancers keep the tradition during the rule of the Khmer Rouge?
The sacred dancers didn't exist. I revived the sacred dancers. I mean, in fact, I gave them the identity of the sacred dancers when I started the dance school in 2007, because I wanted them to have a specific identity. And looking at the bas-relief, you can see that thousands and thousands of dancers were attached to each temples to appropriate, to dedicate some rites. So they were not performers; they were dancers to pray for the gods, to keep the temples alive. And in those days, their dedication were only witnessed by the kings and the high dignitaries. So nowadays the dancers are mere dancers. So this is the first time since the Angkorian time that the temple dancers are revived. This is why I'm fighting to keep them, because since 14 years, these dancers who are professional dancers in the classical dance, but also have the hat of a spiritual dancer, the sacred dancers, they have been praying for the world. They have been praying for the peace of the world, and they have been praying for the welfare of all the children in the world for 14 years. So if we stop them now and ask them to come back when the tourism is resumed, they will be just mere dancers, because the spiritual thread will be broken. They are literally praying every day on a different mantra.
But I also think Tab brought up an interesting idea that, through time, traditional dance has actually been used quite politically. Did the Khmer Rouge, I think, Tad, I think I understand your question as, did the Khmer Rouge use dance in a political way for themselves, or did they just try and destroy it completely?
No. They eradicated the classical, the world ballet. They eradicated the ancient form of dance, but they used the dancer and the movement of dance on propaganda dance for communism and for the Pol Pot era.
Neil from Largo, I'm hoping to go to Vietnam and Cambodia with Viking next year. Will I be able to see a live performance?
Of course, just contact us and we're there for you.
And Laura from the United Kingdom, hello. I saw a performance of traditional Cambodian dance when I travelled on the Mekong with Viking in 2018, and I thought it was beautiful. Looking forward to learning more. And I think, let me just see, I think that's all the questions we have. Oh, more. Okay.
Well, I mean, for Lara from England, I mean, you know, you can see more performance and you can see more ritual if you log in the Facebook Sacred Dancers of Angkor, because most of the videos are there.
Priscilla in Toronto, is there still a royal family in Cambodia?
Oh, yes, you do have a royal family. You have a king and a queen mother. And His Majesty King Sihanouk passed away in 2013. And in fact, in 2012.
Sarah in Los Angeles. Do you have daughters of your own, and do they have an interest?
I have an only daughter who's the same age than Li-Da. And yes,
you won't give away my age, by the way.
No, she's what? I mean, she's born in 76 and you're born in 75.
You're just giving it away.
Yeah.
Yes. But has Alexandra ever danced?
Alexandra, no, never danced. I mean, no. It's very difficult to dance in England. Where do you find a teacher?
No, I know. Or the language, even. Anna in Indianapolis, do you have a secret to your beautiful skin? A question for both of you. Thank you, Anna.
Well,
none whatsoever.
I think that is the Asian genes, the yellow genes. Yellow matter.
Mike, sorry if I've mispronounced it, from Montclair in the US. Does Viking Cruises have exclusive access to the Conservatoire?
Yes.
Not exclusive.
They could.
They could.
We're open to them, and you know, we're so grateful to be on supported by Viking for this program. And of course, I mean, you know, anything, we would do our utmost to accommodate anything that Viking would like to have.
Here is an interesting and important question, I think, in terms of heritage from Poonam. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It is the most authentic program. It is indeed a pleasure to see Indian heritage thriving.
Cambodian heritage is based, yes, you're right, based on Hinduism. From the temple to the dance, I mean, and it is, I think there's a lot of deviation and evolution.
Because maybe, I mean, you know this better than me, Auntie, but Hinduism to Buddhism, there was a change, wasn't there? But it's sort of...
In the time of Jayavarman VII, Jayavarman VII changed the religion from Hinduism to Buddhism. But you see, if you look at in the palace today, this is why what the sacred dancers are doing. Their prayers are Buddhism, and their meditation is Hinduism. But if you go to the palace, all the ceremony in the palace are a blend of Hinduism and Buddhism today.
Okay, I think we're coming to the end of our questions. Lots of lovely comments as well, not necessarily questions, saying how beautiful and young you look, Auntie.
I'm going to be 17 October.
And I think this is the last one. Do these beautiful dancers ever tour? If so, when and where in the States can we see them?
Well, we love them to tour. They have toured in America for 6 weeks, from Boston to New York to Washington to Los Angeles. They have toured in Laos, and they have toured in Japan.
They have. And I went on the American tour, which was...
Exactly. And they're dying to tour. They're dying to share their love and their, the art form of the classical dance.
Absolutely. So I think we are pretty much at the end. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, and go and see the Sacred Dancers. Get in touch with us when you're in Cambodia, and please donate if you can. I think we have an action. Yes, we have a call to action card. This nkfc.org is actually our website. /donate is obviously the donate page. Again, if you go to the PayPal, there's a US dollars version and there's a UK sterling pound version. But if you'd like to know more about the Sacred Dancers, exactly, www.nkfc.org /Sacred Dancers. It's all there. You can get in touch with us by Facebook, Sacred Dancers of Angkor, and we're on Instagram as well if you should want to know more and contact Auntie Ravynn.
Thank you, Li-Da, for mentioning that. But to everyone, thank you so much. And please, the donation is more to give a little bit of your soul to support us.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Viking.
Well, thank you, Viking, so much.
This is Cambodian. This is a Cambodian sign of respect and greeting and goodbye.